the quest to find solutions for the Soweto electricity crisis continues. ActionSA says the multi-billion rand debt owed by Soweto residents must be handled by the ANC-led government. This week, the Johannesburg City Council passed a motion to allow for a feasibility study into city power taking over power supply in Soweto. To further unpack and understand what all of this means, I'm now joined by Funzi Ngobeni, ActionSA caucus leader in Johannesburg. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Now that the motion has been passed, what does it aim to achieve and how will it all unfold?
Yeah, good evening, Mpo, and good evening to the viewers. So what will happen? We want the city to submit a feasibility study within 100 days of this motion being passed in council. And that feasibility study must be conducted by relevant city departments, including the Department of Finance, to compile basically a report that will detail the financial scope and the impact of this integration, and also to report which areas are going to be integrated. That must be done within 100 days. But over and above that, the report must also outline the plan itself of how they are going to integrate these Eskom customers. We also have proposed that the city needs to start developing terms of reference for intergovernmental negotiations with the Department of Energy and Mineral Affairs, Eskom, and also National Treasury. We do this because we recognize that this magnitude of the work will need additional funding from national government, and it will also need national government to acknowledge that this debt that is always being referred to is not going to be inherited by the city. It's going to be a debt that will remain with national government, and they must see how they resolve it. So those are some of the things that we have tabled. And lastly, we want to see a pilot rollout of this integration, being also included into the budget. As you know, the city go into a midterm budget, at around January, February, and we need to prioritize the rollout of this integration by having a pilot rollout in one of the areas that are prone to blackouts. So these are some of the things that we have put together, and they are on our motion. So it's a very comprehensive motion. It's a very sensible one. We also want to make it clear that this motion is not a free pass for people not to pay their rates. It means that once we have successfully implemented this, obviously pending the feasibility study, we need to also look at how we make sure that people are able to manage their consumption using prepaid meters and so forth. So it's something that I think is historic. We have seen in the past, leaders and political leaders making statements about these problems in Soweto, but we have not seen such a motion being tabled in council and the executive being held to accountable on the implementation of this program. So it's the first time, and we as ActionSA are going to make sure that it's implemented fully.
I'm glad you made mention and perhaps emphasize that it's not a free pass, especially as, you speak about various leaders who've weighed in on the Soweto debt problem when it comes to Eskom. We know that Mayor Dr. Mpho Phalatse, Joburg Mayor, has also spoken about the culture of non-payment, saying that it will no longer be accepted. How are you going to ensure that there is a culture of payment that is then instituted when it comes to this massive debt?
Yeah, look, let's put the debt aside. That debt is not the city's problem. I think that debt we have indicated that it must be sent, to the national government. The ANC government have in the past 28 years failed the people of Soweto. They failed in making sure that this debt is being attended to. So our view is that it's not our debt. We must start.
I just meant going forward, pardon me. Just going forward,
yes.
The culture is something that needs to be rectified. I mean, you could end up very well in the same place, even after you may feel to have resolved a problem, so to speak, if it does all work according to your plan.
Yeah, no, Mpho, we have been on the ground. We have been engaging with communities as ActionSA, even when we started as the People's Dialogue, and we know that people of Soweto have always said we want to pay, and I think that is not debatable. People will be paying, but it's important that we must be able to cater for the indigent families, people who are poor, who are not working. We should be able to cater for child-headed households that, so that they can be able to get, free services that is enshrined in our constitution. So that needs to be included into the engagement that we'll be having with National Treasury. As I indicated at the beginning, such a program will need additional funding from National Treasury. So we need to put a team together that will be engaging with them and motivating that we need them to come on board so that we can be able to resolve this issue once and for all and not leave it, to hang as it has been hanging for the last 28 years. It's now time that leaders need to actually come on board. We need to bring, obviously, our officials in the City of Johannesburg who are very clued up on the issues of electricity, who are very clued up on how we can be able to resolve these issues. We need to bring all the heads together on finding a sustainable solution. The good thing is that all these discussions and progress will now be reported to Council on monthly basis. We'll be getting quarterly reports, and all these reports will now be filtered to the communities so that they know how far we are, when issues or when are these pilot programs are going to happen, and when we're going to see progress. It's no longer about talk, but they will be able to see action, which is what we stand for as ActionSA.
Absolutely. Now, one of the problems you may encounter is what Eskom has been speaking to as they recorded perhaps the tally when it comes to the losses that they incur on an annual basis, speaking to over 2 billion rand due to illegal power connections in Gauteng, and Sowetans making up a huge chunk of that figure. How are you going to then resolve the massive challenge of illegal connections?
Yeah, illegal connection is a problem even now with city power customers. We know that in areas of City of Joburg, there are areas which have been historically been supplied by city power, and illegal connection is happening. So the loss it's quite huge, and I think it's about time that municipalities needs to take firm step on dealing with this. We do have indigent policies in the city. People who do not afford to pay do get catered for, and it's not an excuse really for people to connect illegally into the grid. I think as municipalities we need to take a firm step on dealing with illegal connection. We are saying people that can afford to pay must pay, and we must be able to take obviously care of those that are unable to pay. So it's an issue of law enforcement. It's an issue of political will. We should stop having the situation where politicians will interfere when officials are supposed to act on illegal connections and so forth. So these are things that we're saying needs to happen because we are building a country here. We are getting back our country. We know that in areas like Rosettenville, in Hillbrow, you go to other places where people are connecting illegally there, and most cases when we make examples of illegal connection, we only look at informal settlement. We know that the people that can afford to pay, even in areas like Sandton and in Midrand, big companies are connecting illegally into our grid. We need to clamp down on that so that we can be able to get the revenue that we need, that we can be able to direct into poorer areas where people cannot afford. Yeah.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Funzi Ngobeni, ActionSA caucus leader in Johannesburg, speaking to some of the solutions when it comes to the debt owed to Eskom by Soweto residents. Let's take